Chapter 1. The Anniversary Toast. The backyard was dressed like a dream. Twinkling string lights hung in arcs between the trees, casting soft golden hues over rows of white chairs and linen-covered tables. A live quartet played softly in the corner beneath a silk-draped pergola. The scent of roses, grilled steak, and Karen's favorite vanilla candles lingered on the air. John adjusted his black blazer and exhaled slowly. He hadn't worn a tie in months, but tonight demanded something more formal. 25 years, a quarter of a century, a lifetime of building, providing, protecting. He scanned the crowd. Over 100 guests had shown up, family, neighbors, old college friends, clients, even some of Karen's old coworkers. All here to celebrate them. Us, he thought, smiling as he caught a glimpse of her. Karen stood near the center of the yard in a midnight blue dress, wine in one hand, gesturing animatedly as she laughed with two other women. She looked radiant, her auburn hair pinned up with just enough loose curls to seem effortless. Her smile still had the power to unnerve him. She'd always been the charming one, the effortless one. John walked toward the raised patio where the mic stood, clinking his glass along the way. All right, he called out with a warm grin. If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment, don't worry, I promise to keep this short. Mostly, laughter bubbled up. The music faded out. All eyes turned toward him. He looked down at his note cards, but decided to pocket them. He didn't need them. 25 years ago, I stood in front of a much smaller crowd and made a promise to love one woman with all I had, to build a home, raise a family, and do everything I could to make her happy. And I've tried every single day to keep that promise. Karen tilted her head slightly, her wine glass halfway to her lips, eyes softening. Some of you know our story. We met in college. I was the awkward guy in flannel and work boots. She was the wild spirit who somehow saw something in me. Light laughter. John continued, his voice growing steadier. She believed in me when I had nothing. And together, we made something out of it. 3 beautiful kids. A home full of memories. Good years. Hard ones. But through it all, we kept choosing each other. That's what this is about. He raised his glass, a quiet emotion catching in his throat. To Karen, my partner, my love, the reason I kept going. And to 25 years of us. Applause rippled through the crowd. Glasses clinked. Karen smiled politely, raised her wine, and mouthed a soft thank you across the yard. The music started again. John stepped down from the patio, loosening his collar a bit. He just needed a moment alone, maybe a refill. He slipped inside the house, walking past framed photos, their wedding, their first house, the kids as toddlers, blurry with motion and joy. He refilled his bourbon, his fingers lingering on the glass. He heard a burst of laughter outside and glanced through the kitchen window. That's when he saw them, Karen and Steve, standing too close under the tree beside the bar. Her hand rested lightly on Steve's forearm. He leaned in, saying something that made her laugh again. Too hard, too familiar, like she used to laugh with him. John's jaw tightened. Steve, his best friend since high school, best man at his wedding, godfather to his children, always just around, always helpful. Too helpful? Trying to shake off the thought, John pushed open the sliding door, rejoining the festivities. But the warmth was gone now. He moved slowly, his eyes following them as they drifted away from the crowd. Near the side of the yard, by the unlit pathway lined with candles, they stopped. John moved closer, staying in the shadow of a low tree. Their voices were hushed, but clear enough in the quiet moment between songs. Karen leaned in, her lips brushing Steve's cheek in a mock kiss as she murmured, "Can you believe he still thinks there's kids? He's practically raised your family for you." John froze. His heartbeat slowed. His mind didn't understand the words, not right away. His body did. Every nerve in him went cold. Steve chuckled, smug and low, replying, "And with all the money he's put into their private schools and trips, we couldn't have done it better ourselves." Karen giggled, then sipped her wine. John took a step back, stumbling lightly against a potted plant. But then a third voice chimed in from the shadows, high, feminine, unmistakable. His oldest daughter. "Yeah, Uncle Steve is way more fun than our loser dad, anyway." The candlelight flickered across her face as she leaned in beside them, her eyes gleaming with some sick amusement, the same playful smirk Karen used to wear in her 20s. John didn't move. Couldn't. The sounds of laughter, celebration, clinking glasses, it all became muffled background noise, like the world had turned underwater. His breath stuck in his throat. The bourbon glass in his hand trembled, and suddenly, he wasn't holding it anymore. It shattered on the stone path. But no one noticed. Not them. Not the guests. Not even the family he thought was his. The three of them stood there, his wife, his best friend, and his daughter, laughing at the wreckage of his life like it was a private joke. And in that instant, something inside John went quiet. Not broken, not angry, just still. His world had just collapsed, and they didn't even notice. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. The sun rose, but it didn't matter. John sat at the kitchen table, still in the same dress shirt from the night before, sleeves rolled up, collar limp, buttons halfway undone. A cold cup of black coffee sat untouched in front of him, the bitter smell mixing with the faint sweetness of wine still lingering from the party. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard her voice. Can you believe he still thinks they're his kids? His fingers trembled as they ran through his graying hair. The morning birds chirped outside like it was just another day, but John felt like he had been punched through the chest and left hollow. He stared at the empty seat across from him. Karen's seat. Last night, she had kissed his cheek in front of 100 people and called him her rock. Said she loved him. Hours later, she was whispering to Steve like they were the only two people on earth. And the daughter, God, his daughter, joining in, mocking him. He felt the bile rise and pushed the coffee away. Karen came down the stairs like nothing had happened. Hair tousled, still beautiful in that infuriating, effortless way. She wore one of his old T-shirts and stretched casually at the kitchen counter, yawning. She hummed, opening the fridge. Last night was amazing, babe. You really outdid yourself. He looked up slowly. Did I? She smiled at him, that smile. The one he used to think was warmth. Now it looked like a mask. Of course you did. The decorations, the speeches, the food. Everyone said it was perfect. He didn't respond. Karen grabbed a bottle of orange juice, poured herself a glass, then leaned against the counter, sipping. What? She asked, noticing his silence. You look like hell. John forced a smile. Didn't sleep well. She shrugged and walked off, barefoot, humming down the hallway. Like she hadn't detonated his world. He sat motionless, ears ringing. For hours, he went through it all in his head. Every second of last night. Every second of the last 25 years. And suddenly, everything that had once seemed harmless now screamed for attention. He remembered the phone calls she'd take outside. Always outside, even in the middle of winter. She claimed it was just her sister, or work gossip, or her wine club girls. And he believed her. The late-night texts. Just group chats, she said. The smiles when she looked at her phone. The way she always locked it. Even from him. Steve, that son of a bitch. Always around. He'd brushed it off as loyalty, history, friendship. He told people Steve was like a brother who had a key to the house, who showed up with groceries when John was away on business, who played board games with the kids while John fixed broken faucets and filed taxes. And the kids, especially the older two, they always gravitated towards Steve. Uncle Steve is so cool. Uncle Steve took us go-karting. Uncle Steve understands. John used to tell himself it was just because he was the disciplinarian, the boring one, the provider. But now, every laugh, every inside joke between them, all of it, replayed in his head like poison on a loop. He rose from his chair, unshaven and red-eyed, and walked into his study. The room smelled of old books and polish. His sanctuary. He closed the door and picked up his phone. After a long pause, he dialed. A calm male voice answered. Davis & Cole Law Firm. This is Rachel. I need to speak with someone regarding a confidential matter, John said slowly. Marriage. Property. Potential litigation. One moment, sir. The line clicked, then a new voice, deep and measured. This is Eric Cole. How can I help? I need discretion, John said. I need legal advice. And I need it fast. Cole's tone shifted. Understood. Do you want to come in today? No, John said. We'll meet somewhere else. Neutral. Not my home. And I also need an investigator. Someone who knows how to get into everything. Quietly. There was a pause. We can arrange that. John gave him the time and place. A hotel lobby an hour away. Later that afternoon, after hanging up, he sat back down at his desk, breathing heavily. He felt nauseous and awake all at once. His hands moved toward the keyboard, and before he could second-guess it, he typed. Private investigator, discreet infidelity services. He clicked the first few names, scanning credentials, reviews, testimonials. His chest tightened with every scroll. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a post-mortem. He wasn't trying to protect his marriage. He was gathering autopsy photos. He settled on a name. Marcus Reed. Former FBI. Discreet. Thorough. No digital trail. The reviews made it clear. Marcus didn't just find cheaters. He burned down their masks. John emailed the number Marcus used for initial contact. A secure, encrypted address. No subject. Just one line. I need confirmation. And proof. He hit send. Then he stared at the screen, wondering how he had gotten here. 25 years. He'd given her everything. He worked 60-hour weeks, skipped vacations, ignored his own health, put the kids through private school, paid for the cars, the summer camps, the ski trips, half of which he now realized Steve probably attended in his place. And for what? A lie. A performance. He rose from the desk and walked to the window. Outside, Karen was trimming flowers like she always did on Sundays. She had a playlist going on her phone, swaying slightly to the music. She looked peaceful, serene. She looked like someone who thought she still had him wrapped around her finger. She didn't know. Not yet. But he was done playing the fool. He quietly hires a lawyer and a private investigator. Karen doesn't even notice. She assumes she still holds the cards. Chapter 3. The Lie You Live. John stood in the mirror, watching himself adjust the knot of his tie with the careful calm of a man trying not to scream. His reflection didn't blink. His hands moved automatically. Tie, jacket, cufflinks, same routine he'd followed for decades. But this morning, everything felt like a performance. A play written by someone else. And he was the fool walking across the stage. Downstairs, he heard the familiar noise of plates clinking and the coffee maker sputtering. Karen's voice floated upward, soft and casual. Kids, come down or breakfast is getting cold. He exhaled hard, then forced a smile onto his face. By the time he reached the dining room, the mask was back on. Morning, he said, kissing Karen lightly on the cheek. She smiled back, unconcerned. No tension in her eyes. No guilt, like she wasn't lying through her teeth every single day. Big meeting today? She asked. Just follow-ups, he replied flatly. The kids slouched into their seats. Tyler, their youngest, scrolled through his phone with one hand while shoveling scrambled eggs with the other. Olivia barely looked up. Sophie, the eldest, wore that same smug look she'd worn at the party. John's stomach twisted just looking at her. Uncle Steve's coming over later, she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Karen nodded without glancing at John. He's bringing that new VR headset for Tyler. Cool, Tyler muttered. John's fingers clenched around his coffee mug. He pretended to sip it. Maybe he should start paying rent, he said lightly. Karen laughed. Oh, come on. You know Steve's like family. He forced a chuckle. Yeah, like family. They went on eating, oblivious. Or pretending to be. After breakfast, John left for work, or at least that's what they thought. In truth, he drove 2 towns over to meet Marcus Reed, the investigator. They met at a car wash cafe, small enough to not draw attention, noisy enough to drown out a conversation. Marcus wore a dark gray windbreaker and carried an old messenger bag. His voice was quiet but steady, efficient. You were right to come to me, he said, handing over a thumb drive. I haven't dug deep yet, but the first pass already shows a pattern. Same hotels, burner numbers, shared bank statements in someone else's name. John didn't speak. He just nodded, jaw tight. I'll keep pulling, but you want to brace yourself. This isn't recent. How far back? John finally asked. Marcus looked at him. Over a decade, at least. John said nothing, just closed his hand around the drive. Back home, he plugged it into a hidden laptop in his study, one he bought weeks ago just for this purpose. The folders opened like silent confessions. Blurry parking lot photos of Steve and Karen hugging behind tinted windows. Time-stamped receipts from hotels and restaurants he'd never visited. Karen's text logs, somehow recovered, full of coded affection and cheap flirtation. John stared at one message in particular. If he ever finds out, I'm dead. But God, I wish I could just live with you and drop the act already. Drop the act. That's what his life had become, an act. A lie performed every day in a house built on betrayal. He shut the laptop and stood in the darkened study, staring at the bookshelves like they betrayed him too. For years he believed in hard work, loyalty, consistency. He used to think those things mattered, that if you gave people stability, they'd love you for it. But now he knew better. That night, he tucked Tyler into bed. The boy grinned up at him, eyes soft. Uncle Steve said he's taking us camping next weekend. Can we go, Dad? John's voice caught his throat. We'll see, bud. Get some sleep. He kissed his forehead and turned off the light, walking into the hallway with a weight in his chest. His son, who may not be his, still looked at him with trust. Still call him Dad. And yet, even that felt like theft now. Karen was curled up on the living room couch when he returned, wrapped in a blanket, wine glass in hand, phone glowing in her lap. Her fingers danced across the screen with practiced speed. She didn't even look up. Everything okay? She asked casually. Yeah, he lied. She smiled. You've been quiet lately. Work's been intense. Another lie. She shifted over and patted the cushion next to her. Come sit with me. I miss this. John sat. Her hand reached over to rest on his thigh, like old times. He flinched inside but stayed still. He let her kiss his neck. Her lips felt cold. He glanced at the phone on her lap. The name Steve Tumblerglass flashed across the top of a message bubble. Karen didn't even notice. He wanted to scream, wanted to tear the phone out of her hand and shove the truth in her face. But he didn't. Not yet. He sat there, letting her touch him, pretending everything was fine. Because she wasn't the only one who could act. The days stretched on like that. Polite dinners, dead-eyed conversations, school meetings, grocery runs, all the normal motions hollowed out and poisoned. John kept the mask on, even when it burned. He watched Steve's visits like a hawk. The way he always parked one house down, like he thought it made a difference. The way Karen's voice changed, higher, breathier, when Steve was in the room. The smug glances they exchanged, like co-conspirators at a murder trial. The children grew more distant too. John noticed it in small things, less eye contact, more sarcasm, offhand remarks that cut deeper than they knew. Uncle Steve says you don't have to yell to be respected. You're so uptight all the time. God, why are you always here lately? Each comment chipped away at what was left of him. But he never broke. He smiled. He nodded. He made their lunches and paid the bills and let them keep believing. Because he wasn't done collecting. Not yet. John doesn't confront. He plans. Chapter 4. Threads of Truth. The manila envelope sat on the corner of John's desk like a loaded gun. Marcus had dropped it off personally. No emails, no cloud shares. Too sensitive, he'd said. This never touches the internet. You want truth. It's in here. But once you see it, you don't come back from it. Now John just stared at it, afraid to open it, afraid not to. His fingers trembled as they hovered over the flap. It felt like he was peeling open his own chest. He took a breath, tore it open. Inside were 2 folders and a thumb drive. One marked activity log, the other DNA. He opened the first folder. Photos spilled out, grainy but clear enough. Karen and Steve at a small in 2 hours outside the city. Arms around each other, smiles too intimate to be explained away. Timestamps dated back years. Not months. Years. John flipped through them slowly. Hotel parking lots. Beach houses. A ski resort cabin he remembered paying for as a surprise anniversary gift. He stared at one image. Karen in a red sweater, laughing as Steve kissed her cheek on a snow-covered balcony. John remembered that trip. He hadn't been able to go because of a last-minute work emergency. Karen said she'd take the kids instead. They needed a break. Steve had offered to drive. You're such a lifesaver, she told him then. John's stomach twisted. He dug deeper into the folder. Text message printouts, Karen and Steve using burner phones, prepaid numbers. Coded language that wasn't all that coded. Steve, he still thinks Olivia looks like his mom. God, the delusion. Karen, he wants to believe. Makes him feel useful. And I keep the house, so... Steve, you've always been smarter than him. John's hand shook so badly he had to set the paper down. They mocked him. Not just the cheating. Not just the deception. The arrogance. The cruelty. All these years, he'd been the punchline of their private joke. He picked up the second folder, the one labeled DNA. 3 sealed reports. 1 for each child, each marked with the same header. Paternity test results. He opened Sophie's first. Probability of paternity. 0%. His breath caught. Olivia. 0%. Tyler. 0%. No, John whispered aloud. No, no, no. He pushed back from the desk, clutching the arms of his chair like the room was spinning. The papers floated to the ground like falling leaves. All 3. Not 1. All 3. It wasn't a one-night mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was deliberate, sustained, hidden in plain sight. He stumbled to the bathroom and barely made it before vomiting into the sink. His knees buckled as he leaned over the cold porcelain, the taste of bile and metal sharp in his mouth. After a long moment, he wiped his face with shaking hands and stared at his reflection. His eyes were red, not from rage, from heartbreak, from grief, because the illusion was gone now. There were no doubts left. The family he thought he built wasn't his. The children he raised, loved, sacrificed for, they belonged to another man. A man who had used his loyalty like a shield, his trust like a weapon. He sat on the edge of the bathtub, shoulders hunched, hands covering his face. He wept, not loud, not hysterical, but deep, silent, the kind of crying that comes from the soul when there's no one to hear you and no point in pretending anymore. Hours passed before he emerged again. He walked through the house in a daze. The photos on the walls mocked him now. Tyler's Little League trophy, Sophie's graduation cap, family vacations where Karen beamed beside him while Steve stood just a few steps away, smiling like a guest. But he wasn't a guest. He was the architect of it all. John picked up a framed photo from the mantel. Their wedding day, Karen in white, holding his hand, eyes wide with youth and promise. Lies. All of it. He stared until his hands started to shake again. Then he hurled the frame across the room. It shattered against the wall, glass exploding like broken vows. And just like that, something inside him shifted. The tears dried. The ache dulled. Not because the pain was gone, but because something colder had taken its place. He gathered the photos, the documents, the drive. He sealed them in a black folder and slid it into the bottom drawer of his desk, locking it shut. The man who had wept was gone now. In his place was someone new, someone quiet, focused, a man no longer clinging to the illusion of family, a man with nothing left to lose. Crushed, John weeps in private, but his heartbreak turns in his silent rage. His whole life, his manhood, pride, fatherhood, was a lie built by the 2 people he trusted most. Chapter 5. Rewriting the Will. John walked into the law office wearing his finest navy suit. No one watching would have guessed the truth, that he'd barely slept in days, that he was hollowed out by betrayal, that his entire reality had shattered just weeks before. To them, he looked calm, successful, the devoted husband and family man they'd probably seen on last year's holiday card. Mr. Callahan, the receptionist greeted. Mr. Cole is ready for you. John nodded and followed her down the hallway to the private office. Eric Cole stood as he entered, offering a firm handshake. John, good to see you again. Please have a seat. The legal pad on the desk was already open. A slim manila folder lay beside it. I've reviewed your documents, Cole began. It's unconventional but not illegal. You're entitled to change your will, your beneficiaries, even your asset structure, so long as you're not under coercion or hiding assets during active litigation. There is no litigation, John said calmly. Not yet. Cole paused, then nodded. All right, let's begin. John leaned forward, speaking slowly and clearly. I want all 3 children removed as beneficiaries. No trusts, no fallback clauses, nothing. Not a cent. Cole blinked. Are you sure, John? I understand tensions happen, but full disinheritance, I'm sure, he said, voice like steel. Put it in writing. Cole hesitated another beat before scribbling a note. And your wife? He asked. John looked out the window, eyes hard. Karen gets nothing. Not now. Not when I die. I'll establish a charitable foundation. Or burn it all if I have to. The attorney didn't ask questions. He just nodded, quietly impressed, and began drafting. The paperwork would take a few days, but John left that office with a grim satisfaction pulsing in his chest. It was the first time in weeks he'd felt control return to his hands. By that afternoon, he'd opened a new bank account under a shell corporation name. Offshore. Clean. Quiet. Just like Marcus had advised. Over the next 2 weeks, John liquidated nearly half of his investment portfolio. Slowly. Carefully. Nothing to raise alarm. A few divestments here, some rebalancing there. No red flags. He transferred everything into the new structure: stocks, cash reserves, bonds, gold. He even moved several valuable paintings from their living room to a private storage unit 2 counties away, telling Karen they were being reappraised for insurance. She didn't question it. Why would she? To her, John was still playing the role. Still her gullible husband. Still the doting father, the solid provider. By day, he kept the charade alive. He brought home groceries, took Tyler to basketball practice, listened to Olivia rant about college applications, even made love to Karen once, though the entire time he stared at the ceiling, mind elsewhere. By night, he plotted. At his home office, behind a locked drawer only he had the key to, he built digital maps of every account, every asset, every hiding place. He logged passwords in a handwritten notebook, no digital trace. He drafted false emails to himself with fake subject lines and encrypted them with a local app Marcus had installed. He began boxing up jewelry, watches, heirlooms, carefully marked, cataloged, and moved under the pretense of renovating the safe. Karen still didn't notice. One afternoon, she popped her head into the office. You're working too much lately. Everything okay? John looked up from a spreadsheet. Just tying off some loose ends before Q4. I'll take some time off next month. She smiled, satisfied. Well, you've earned it. Earned it. What a joke. Each time she touched him, kissed him, laughed with him, John felt it less. Not just anger, something colder. Like her presence was background noise in a life already closed. Steve came over one Saturday with pizza and beers. The kids cheered like a celebrity had arrived. Karen's eyes lit up. They laughed in the kitchen while John sat alone on the patio, pretending to read, listening through the cracked, sliding glass door. Steve's voice floated through the air. Ty, remember when we went to the amusement park and your dad got scared on the roller coaster? The boy laughed. That was you, Uncle Steve. Dad didn't even go that day. You took us. John's grip on the book tightened, knuckles white. Karen laughed. You've always been the fun one. And there was again that tone, that arrogance, that shared secret. John stayed quiet. 2 days later, he changed the alarm codes on the house. Quietly. Only his fingerprint remained on the master lock. He created a new digital safe entry, routed access through a dummy server in Europe. He cleared every digital trail. Marcus texted him a single update. All assets hidden. House still in your name. Accounts clean. Phase 2 ready when you are. John replied, Not yet. Wait. Because this was about more than revenge. It was about control. About reclaiming something they'd taken from him, his dignity, his legacy, his name. He stood in the dark of his study that night, looking over the quiet home he'd built. Karen upstairs watching some Netflix drama. The kids on their devices. Steve long gone. And John smiled, because they had no idea. By day, he plays the doting husband. By night, he quietly dismantles the life they built together. Chapter 6. The Nuclear Moment. The dining room was set with care, white linen tablecloth, polished silverware, tall candles flickering softly between wine glasses. The chandelier above cast a warm glow, adding an illusion of peace to a room already crackling with unspoken tension. John sat at the head of the table, dressed sharp in a tailored charcoal suit. Karen, across from him, wore a deep burgundy dress, elegant, understated. Olivia and Tyler flanked her. Sophie sat nearest Steve, who had, once again, made himself at home at John's family table. They laughed too loudly at his jokes. Karen touched his arm too familiarly. The kids, especially Sophie, looked at Steve like he was their golden ticket to fun and freedom. John smiled quietly. He poured wine for everyone, his movements smooth and practiced. "I thought tonight we'd celebrate," he said warmly. "We haven't had a proper family dinner in a while." Karen raised a brow. "What's the occasion?" John shrugged. "Reflection. Gratitude. Closure." "Sounds heavy," Steve joked, swirling his glass. "Not at all," John said, his voice low. "In fact, I want to make a toast." The room fell respectfully silent. Everyone raised their glasses. John stood slowly, glass in hand. "To the people closest to me," he began. "To laughter, love, and secrets." Steve chuckled. "Secrets, huh?" John smiled. "Yeah, the kind that fester. The kind that sit in the walls like mold while everyone pretends the house is still beautiful." Karen's smile faltered slightly. "John," he looked at her. "You know, I always wondered what betrayal would feel like. If it would be sharp, sudden, violent. But it wasn't. It was slow, like watching termites eat your home, one quiet bite at a time." The air turned heavy. John gestured toward the TV mounted on the wall behind him. "I made something," he said softly. "A slideshow of sorts." He pulled out a small remote from his pocket and clicked it. The screen lit up. At first, it was just a black and white image. Karen and Steve, embracing outside a cheap motel, time-stamped in red at the corner, 9 years ago. Karen froze. Steve's smirk vanished. The next image showed them at a beach house, one John remembered booking as a family retreat, where he'd stayed home last minute because of a work emergency. Only Karen and the kids had gone. Apparently, not alone. The photos clicked on, one after another. Different locations. Different years. Same 2 people. Then came the audio. Karen's voice, soft but cruel. "He still thinks they're his. It's pathetic, really. But as long as he keeps paying, let him play daddy." Steve, laughing. "Hey, we should thank him. He's built one hell of a life for us." Karen stood. "John, stop this." He didn't. The screen switched to scan PDFs. Lab results. DNA paternity analysis. Subject: John Callahan. Result: 0% match. 3 different documents. 3 different names. 3 children. 1 truth. Olivia's mouth fell open. What is this?" John didn't look at her. He didn't look at any of them. Sophie's voice rose. "You went through our DNA? What the hell, Dad? Is this a joke?" Tyler asked, pale. Steve rose, hands up like a politician caught off guard. "Okay, this is getting out of hand. This is private family stuff. We don't need to turn this into some courtroom drama." Karen was shaking now. "John, please." "The kids don't. They know now," John said, finally facing her. "They know everything." Sophie snapped. "You're being insane. This isn't fair. None of you asked for this." "You asked for nothing," John said coldly. "You took, and you mocked, and you lied." Olivia pointed a shaking finger at Karen. "Wait, Mom, is it true? Is he saying Steve's our?" Karen didn't answer. The room erupted into chaos. Voices overlapping. Accusations flying. "You ruined our lives. He's not even your real dad. You used him. I trusted you." Steve tried to calm things down, arms out like he was doing damage control. "Let's all take a breath, okay? We don't need to blow up like this." John turned to him calm. "Too calm. You've already blown up everything, Steve. You just didn't expect me to light the match." Steve opened his mouth but had nothing left to say. Karen finally sank back in her chair, trembling. Her hands covered her face. The perfect mask she'd worn for years crumbled in real time. John looked at each of them, one by one. His children, his by love, not blood. His wife, his partner in nothing but betrayal. His best friend, his executioner with a smile. The room had become an echo chamber of panic, betrayal, and shrill desperation. And he said nothing more. He turned away, walked to the front door, opened it, stepped into the night, and closed it behind him. John says nothing more. He walks out mid-chaos. Chapter 7. Ghost Protocol. Karen woke to the shrill buzz of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. She reached over groggily, expecting a message from John. Maybe a weak apology. Maybe something they could still patch together. Maybe nothing. She sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from her face. The space beside her was cold and untouched. John, she called softly, pulling back the sheets. Silence. She patted across the carpet, heart tapping nervously now. She glanced into the in-soot bathroom. Empty. The closet. Half the clothes gone. No overnight bag. No shoes. His dresser drawers sat open, neatly emptied. A strange chill crept down her spine. Descending the stairs in her robe, Karen noticed more oddities. The large portrait in the foyer of their wedding day. Gone. The watch box he used to keep by the liquor cabinet. Missing. The safe in the office. Unlocked. Empty. Panic set in. She picked up her phone again, dialing him. Straight to voicemail. Once. Twice. 3 times. She called again. And again. And again. John, what are you doing? She whispered, pacing the kitchen now. Her voice cracked. Pick up. She went to the garage. The Tesla? Gone. The Audi? Gone. Just her car remained, sitting alone like a forgotten relic. She tried logging into their joint bank account. Her fingers trembled. The screen loaded. $0, she gasped. Her heart pounded now, breath coming faster. She opened their investment dashboard. Locked. Account disabled. She opened the app for their property management account. Delinquent. In foreclosure process. No. No, no, no. She whispered. What the hell is happening? Footsteps echoed from upstairs. Tyler appeared, bleary-eyed. Why are you yelling? Karen turned, trying to mask the sheer terror crawling across her face. Something's wrong. Your father, he's gone. Tyler rubbed his face. Gone where? I don't know, she said, voice rising. He's just gone. He cleaned out the accounts. Tyler frowned, then pulled out his phone. Let me call him, he said, dialing. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. And again. Olivia wandered in next, drawn by the noise. Why are we yelling at 7 a.m.? She muttered, yawning. Your father's missing, Karen snapped. He's probably out getting coffee or something. Olivia rolled her eyes. He does it when he's pissed. Karen turned to her daughter, wild-eyed. No, he's not coming back. He's emptied everything. Everything. Sophie joined them in the kitchen moments later, and for the first time, the 3 kids seemed truly unsettled. Olivia stared at her mother. Wait, you're serious? Karen nodded, mouth dry. Gone, she repeated. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, jewelry, safety deposit box. Even the title to this house, it's being foreclosed. Tyler blinked. You're telling me Dad took everything? Karen nodded mutely. Holy shit, Olivia muttered, sitting down hard. Sophie folded her arms. So what now? He's ghosted us? Is this like revenge? Karen could feel it. The walls were closing in. She turned to her phone and called Steve. Straight to voicemail. She called again. And again. No answer. She checked his location. Disabled. She texted. Where are you? Call me. It's an emergency. John's gone. I think he's done something insane. No reply. She opened Facebook. Steve's profile. Deleted. She checked Instagram. Same. Panic turned into dread. Where's Steve? Olivia asked, suddenly picking up on her mom's nervous glances. I don't know, Karen stammered. He's not answering either. So let me get this straight, Tyler said, jaw clenched. Dad nukes everything. And Steve magically vanishes too? What the hell did you two do? Karen whipped around, voice rising. Don't you dare talk to me like that, no. Tyler shouted. You don't get to act like the victim now. You and Steve have been screwing around for how long? And now Dad's done playing stupid. He's gone, Mom. Gone. Karen's eyes welled up. This wasn't supposed to happen. Sophie looked away. God, this is such a mess. Olivia just shook her head, disbelief giving way to a silent rage. He played us all. I can't believe he just vanished. Karen grabbed the countertop, breathing hard. Then the doorbell rang. The silence was immediate. She walked slowly to the front door. Her fingers shook as she opened it. A uniformed courier stood holding a manila envelope. Delivery for Karen Callahan, he said. She signed mechanically and took the envelope. The courier turned and walked away without another word. Karen opened it on the foyer table, the kids crowding around. Inside, neatly prepared divorce papers. Signed. Dated. No note. No apology. Just one bold, black signature at the bottom. Jonathan Callahan. She slumped against the wall, a low sob escaping her throat. The world around her began to tilt. The foundation she'd built her illusions on had collapsed overnight. And John? He was gone. No trail, no leads, nothing but a man-shaped void that swallowed everything they once had. Karen panics. The kids are confused. Steve is nowhere to be found either. Chapter 8. Life After Lies. 5 years later. The sound of clattering dishes echoed through the cramped diner on the edge of downtown. Karen stood behind the counter, her back aching, wiping down a sticky section near the register. Her name tag, faded and scratched, read K. Callahan. No one called her that anymore. Most co-workers just called her K. She glanced at the clock. 2:17 p.m. Another 5 hours to go. Her uniform was tight around the shoulders, the stitching worn. Grease stains from yesterday refused to wash out. She had dark bags under her eyes, and her once pristine blonde hair was dull and tied into a frayed ponytail. The tip split like her life had. "Order up," barked Henry, the cook, sliding a chipped plate of eggs across the window. Karen moved without emotion, delivering the food to a booth where a man sat alone, scrolling on his phone. He didn't look up. "Here you go," she said. "MMH," he grunted, already chewing. Karen walked away, the tip of her sneakers squeaking against the tile floor. It wasn't the job that broke her. It was the silence that followed her everywhere, the absence of identity, of relevance, of legacy. The fallout had been swift, public, humiliating. John had filed for divorce with clinical precision. The proof of infidelity, photos, text messages, hotel receipts, had left little room for argument in court. The DNA tests weren't just exhibits, they were weapons. The judge had ruled swiftly. Karen received no spousal support, no share of retirement assets, no claim to business accounts. The estate had been dissolved without her name on anything. The media got wind. A few blogs spun headlines like, "CEO ghosts wife after DNA bombshell. Cheating scandal erupts. Father of 3? Not quite." In every image, John looked calm, poised, silent. Karen looked like a deer caught in headlights. Steve had disappeared just 2 weeks after John's exit. One night, he didn't show up. She called, texted, visited his condo. Gone. Not a toothbrush left behind. Not a word. Coward. She hadn't seen or heard from him since. And the kids? That was the deepest wound. They tried at first. Sophie moved in with her boyfriend 2 months after the scandal. Olivia transferred to a college out of state, barely calling. Tyler stopped responding altogether after a shouting match in the parking lot of the gas station, where he'd screamed, "You destroyed everything he gave us." Everything. Karen had stood there, stunned, mascara running, gripping his arm as he pulled away. Now, they texted maybe once a month. A short, cold check-in. Nothing more. Birthdays passed in silence. Holidays came and went like dull gray clouds. No visits. No forgiveness. The tiny apartment she lived in smelled faintly of mildew. Her neighbors were noisy. The heater rattled in the winter, and the AC barely worked in July. She kept an old family portrait in her sock drawer. Sometimes she'd pull out at night. John stood in the center of that picture, tall, dignified, smiling. The kids, young and beaming, stood beside him. Karen had her arm wrapped around his. She used to believe that meant something. She hadn't smiled like that in years. Every now and then, she still checked the internet. Rumors surfaced now and then. John Callahan spotted in Portugal. John seen buying property in the Philippines. Retired American investor living quietly in Italy. Nothing confirmed. No photos. Just whispers. But every rumor had the same through line. He was rich. He was peaceful. He was happy. Karen couldn't say the same. Her mornings were silent. Her evenings lonelier. Some nights she dreamed he'd come back. That he'd look at her and see how she'd suffered. That he might forgive her. Other nights she dreamed of Steve. Mocking her. Disappearing again. A ghost with slick hair and a cocky grin. She wondered if he'd ever cared about her. Or if she was just his way of getting back at the man who always outshined him. She had no answers. Just echoes. The bell above the diner door jingled. pulling her back to the present. A couple walked in, young, in love, holding hands. Karen plastered on a tired smile. "Booth or table?" "Booth, please," the woman said sweetly. Karen led them to the corner, set down menus, and took their drink order. As she turned away, she caught sight of the man's hand resting on the woman's lower back, tenderly, with that quiet kind of love that once felt familiar. Karen swallowed the lump rising in her throat and walked back to the counter. She poured herself a cup of burnt coffee, sipped, and stared out the window. The world outside moved on. People laughed, lived, loved, and somewhere out there, John Callahan was living a new life. Without her, without them, without looking back. Rumors swirl. John is living abroad, rich, peaceful, and reborn. Chapter 9. The Final Letter. The morning air felt heavy, as if the sky itself held its breath. July 17th. The date struck Karen the moment her alarm buzzed. Their anniversary, or would have been their 30th. She didn't even bother to get dressed yet. She sat in her threadbare robe, cradling a chipped mug of coffee in both hands, staring blankly at the condensation forming on the kitchen window. Her eyes traced the drops as they slithered downward, disappearing into the sill like memories she couldn't hold on to. Her phone hadn't buzzed. No one remembered the date, but she did. Every year, she rose to her feet and trudged to the mailbox, not expecting much, bills maybe, some junk coupons. But inside was a single envelope, elegant and cream-colored, thick with weight. No return address. Her breath caught. She turned it over and stared at the name written in bold, precise strokes. Karen, just her name. Her hands trembled. She stepped back inside, locked the door behind her without thinking, and sat slowly at the table. With trembling fingers, she opened the flap and pulled out a single, folded letter. The paper smelled faintly of sandalwood. She unfolded it. And read, "Karen, I imagine this will come as a surprise. You may have expected silence forever, and truthfully, I considered that. But today marks what would have been our 30th anniversary. I figured it was as fitting a time as any to say what's been sitting in my chest all these years. Don't worry, this isn't a threat. I'm not looking for revenge. I've already taken everything I ever needed. What I want now is to speak clearly. Honestly, for the first time in decades. You stole from me. Not money, not possessions. You stole my life. Not the life I lived, but the one I thought I had. That's the difference. One is real, the other was an illusion. And you made sure I lived in the illusion for 25 years. I don't even know when it started, do I? Was it year 5? Year 10? You and Steve, my friend. My brother and all, but blood. Do you remember how I trusted him with everything? Our business, our family, I look back now, and I see it all clearly. The long phone calls in the garage. The way your body would stiffen when I walked into a room. The inside jokes the kids had with him, ones I never understood. The time I found his cufflinks in our bathroom, and you said he must have dropped them while helping fix the sink. God, I wanted to believe you so badly. I needed to believe you. Because if I didn't, what would that make my life? What would that make me? For years, I worked 12-hour days, built our home, built our future, all to make sure you and the kids had more than I ever did. Vacations, private schools, birthdays with pony rides and clowns. You used to laugh at how over the top I made things. I used to think it was love. Now I know it was a smirk behind the curtain. Still, I kept giving. I raised those children like they were my own. And biologically, they weren't. I know that now. The reports made it clear. But here's the thing, Karen. I love them anyway. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every college application, I poured myself into them. Because that's who I was. That's who you let me be. And maybe that's the cruelest part. You let me love them. You let me give myself completely, all while whispering jokes into Steve's ear, while sitting on a lie so profound it shattered the ground I stood on. But you know what? I'm still standing. I vanished, yes. I left everything behind because it wasn't mine to begin with. The house, paid for with sweat and lies. The family, built on betrayal. The love, one-sided. But leaving didn't break me. It rebuilt me. You freed me. You freed me to find out who I really was without you. I live in a quiet town now, far from a noise. I drink my coffee slow. I read every day. I take walks at sunrise. I speak to people who look me in the eye, not past me. I spend time with people who don't ask me for anything except presents. I have peace. That was something I never had with you, not really. I've forgiven you, Karen. I mean that. Not because you asked me to. Not because you deserve it. But because I refuse to let your choices define the rest of my life. I forgave you because hate is still a kind of tether, and I cut every last string when I walked away. But don't mistake forgiveness for forgetfulness. I will never forget. I carry the scars. Quietly. Deeply. I see your face sometimes when I close my eyes. The way you used to touch my arm at parties, just enough to seem connected. Just enough to keep up the act. I remember you laughing at that joke Steve made during our 25th anniversary. The one I wasn't supposed to hear. I remember the look on your face when I played the video on the screen. That look was real. Maybe the only real moment we ever had. Still, thank you for freeing me. This is the last you'll hear from me. Please don't reply. I've said everything I needed to. I may not be their father by blood, but I love them like they were mine. That love was real. You weren't. Chapter 10. The Exit Wound. The ocean breeze tugged gently at John's shirt as he stood on the terrace of his small villa, perched atop a rocky cliff on the edge of an island he had chosen not for fame or fortune, but for silence. The endless stretch of cobalt water glittered under the afternoon sun, waves crashing softly against jagged rocks below, a timeless symphony that neither demanded nor judged. John inhaled deeply, letting the salt air fill his lungs. The scent was unfamiliar, yet intoxicating, freedom distilled in every breath. It was a far cry from the cold, marble halls and echoing boardrooms where his old life had been forged and shattered. He had a new name now, a new identity crafted with the meticulous care of a man rebuilding from ruin. But more than that, he had something he never realized he was missing. Peace. Not the kind that arrives suddenly like a bomb, but the slow, steady kind that seeps into your bones after years of wrestling with ghosts. He leaned on the stone railing, watching a fishing boat drift lazily on the horizon. His phone vibrated, a message from a local friend inviting him to dinner. He smiled, typed a quick reply, then pocketed the device. Social media, emails, business calls, they were relics of a past life, discarded along with the suits and business cards. John's thoughts drifted back to the woman he once called his wife. Karen. The word no longer carried the weight of love or betrayal. It was a name in a book whose pages he had closed long ago. He remembered the last time he saw her, at the anniversary dinner, when he played the video. The faces frozen on that screen had held so much pain. But more than pain, there was a release, a final tearing away of the mask they'd worn for decades. He had watched her break down, heard Steve's hollow laughter, felt the children's shock and fury. And then he walked out. He remembered the sharp taste of grief, but also the growing flame of something stronger, dignity. Now, he was no longer the man who had been shattered by deceit. He was a man forged anew. John stepped inside and sat by the window overlooking the ocean. The villa was modest but comfortable. Whitewashed walls, simple wooden furniture, a bookshelf lined with worn volumes on philosophy and history. He had taken up writing in recent years, letters, journals, stories, attempts to capture the fragments of his experience, to understand himself. His journal lay open on the desk, ink still wet on the latest entry. He read aloud softly to himself. I used to believe that revenge would heal the wounds, that proving them wrong would set me free. But revenge is a chain forged from anger, and anger only breeds more pain. True freedom comes not from tearing others down, but from building yourself up. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. The moment was perfect in its quiet grandeur. John reached for a small photo tucked in the corner of his desk, a candid shot of his 3 children, younger, smiling, unaware of the chaos their lives would later endure. He traced the edges lightly with a finger. They were not his by blood, but they had been his heart. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I loved you truly." A gentle knock interrupted his reverie. Mariana, his neighbor and friend, stepped in holding 2 cups of tea. "You look like you're miles away," she said with a knowing smile. John chuckled softly. I was just thinking how much life can change without warning. She handed him a cup and sat beside him on the worn leather couch. Any regrets? She asked. John paused, considering. I used to carry a heavy burden of bitterness. But I've learned that some wounds don't kill you. They show you the way out. Mariana smiled warmly, raising her cup. To new beginnings. He clinked his cup against hers. The ocean outside whispered its eternal lullaby, and John finally felt it, an unshakable calm. A peace he had earned through pain and truth. He wasn't a victim anymore. He was a survivor. And in this small island haven, beneath the endless sky, he had found a freedom that had once seemed impossible. Some wounds don't kill you. They show you the way out.